in an all-new, larger-than-life feature film. Now, the Dark Knight confronts his newest and most...
Picture a cinema in New York, Christmas night 1993. The new Batman film is about to start, and the room is nearly empty. A man a few rows down is doing exactly what you are doing. He is counting the audience, about a dozen people by his count. Then he waves them all over. Hey, you guys want to sit together? The man is Mark Hamill. He is the voice of the Joker. He bought tickets to his own film and found almost no one to watch it with. Critics now argue that the film playing to that empty room is the best Batman film ever made. This is the story of how that happens, and what it costs the people in the middle of it. The film is Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. On the surface, a murder mystery. A masked figure is killing Gotham's old gangsters, and the city blames Batman. Underneath, something quieter. The woman Bruce Wayne almost married has come back. And for the first time in his life, he has a reason to stop. It is a detective story on top, and a film about whether man is allowed to put his past down. Warner Brothers built it as neither. Warner Brothers built it as a videotape. There is a document that settles what this was supposed to be, the final draft of the screenplay. The title on the page is not Mask of the Phantasm, it is Masks, and the heading above it reads Batman Home Video. That is what they were building, a cartoon for the rental shell, made by the crew of the afternoon series. Then, the way Alan Burnett tells it, an executive walked in from the lot while Eric Radomski was building something nobody had seen before, a Gotham City generated on a computer for the opening of the television series. The executive watched it glide past and said, "We should make this a feature film." Nobody has ever put a name to him. In the spring of '93, Warner Brothers announced a Christmas release, and the studio's head of production made a promise on the record. The film would be released, quote, "as wide as any feature movie with all the TV promotions." Hold on to that sentence. Everything that follows is measured against it. Eric Radomski was in Asia, handing storyboards to the overseas animators when the call reached him. Warner had decided the video was going to cinemas. His reaction was not delight. "My jaw hit the floor," he says, and then not in a good way. Because they had designed the whole thing for a television set. A squarish frame, already storyboarded, shot by shot. And now all of it had to be wide, with no time to draw it again. So Tim and Radomski cut the wider shape out of a sheet of paper, laid it over the boards they had, and decided it just about worked. A sheet of paper with a hole in it. That was the fix. And suddenly, the film had an audience inside the building. When it was a video, Tim said, it was just a kid's show. Get it out there, whatever. The minute it was going to cinemas, every department on the lot had an opinion. Someone found the flashbacks confusing and had the whole film recut into plain chronological order, which would have kept Batman off the screen for the opening half hour. They cut it. They screened it. It died in the room, and the structure went back the way it was. The sharpest cost landed on Andrea Romano. She had directed the voices of this Batman from the beginning, but director was a word the Directors Guild kept for its members, and this was a feature now. Warner's feature department rang to say she could not be credited as a voice director, and gave her 2 hours to invent a new name for what she was, because the woman making the call was leaving on holiday. She chose Voice Supervision. It is printed in the trade papers that December. The woman who directed every performance in this film credited as something else because the film got promoted. Start to finish, they were given 8 months. Radomski put that in perspective before the film even opened, a fraction of the time Disney was spending on Aladdin. That was the machine grinding. Step inside the recording booth, though, and something else entirely was happening. There is a scene in this film where Bruce Wayne kneels at his parents' grave and begs them to release him. He has met someone, he is happy, and he is asking permission to stop. Kevin Conroy recorded it. When the take finished, nobody said anything. In Conroy's words, there was just a lot of silence in the studio. Andrea Romano pressed the talk back and asked for 2 minutes. By her own account, she was crying too hard to speak. Conroy explained it later. Something came up in him. He had grown up with a father he calls a terrible drunk, and left home at 17, and looked after the old man anyway, to the end of his life. You never know why a certain chord is hit, he said. The key to being an actor is to be open enough to let any chord be hit. And that is the film's real subject, not who is under the Phantasm's mask. The film barely bothers to keep that a secret. The question underneath is whether Bruce Wayne can split himself in half and survive it. Mask of the Phantasm answers quietly, and it answers no. The disguise is not the mask he puts on at night. The disguise is the face he wears in daylight. Kevin Conroy understood that better than anyone alive, and it is why his graveyard take stopped the room. Down the hall, Shirley Walker was writing what she would later call probably the best score she ever had the chance to write, a full orchestra, a choir. Listen to the main title. The choir is singing something that sounds like Latin, It isn't. Walker was tired of fighting to get her people into the credits. So she wrote their names backwards, syllable by syllable, and had the choir sing those. When the studio's legal department rang to ask what the language was, she told them it was an obscure choral tongue that survived only in out-of-print orchestration books. Her music editor worked it out at the session. He turned to her and said, "You didn't do what I think you've done, did you?" The people inside this film gave it everything they had. Then it left their hands and landed on a release date. Christmas Day, 1993. Warner kept half of the promise. The screens. Mask of the Phantasm opened in more cinemas than any other film that weekend. What it never got was the other half. There were no ads, Hamill says, on Saturday Night Live or in any of the normal places you would see a film advertised. The screens were there. The audience had simply never been told. Tombstone opened the same weekend on almost exactly the same number of screens and took about 5 times the money. Variety saw it coming. Its reviewer, filing from a screening on the Warner lot, praised the cast and called the animation, quote, clunky to the point of self-parody. He was reviewing the exact thing the Rush promotion had damaged. The rest of the story is short. Its only award nomination lost to The Lion King. In Britain, it never reached a cinema at all. It went straight to video, and the censors cut it on the way. And when the American run ended, the film had earned less than it had cost to make. In the cinema, that is the end of the story, but cinemas are not the only rooms with a screen. A few months later, it came out on tape, which is where it had been going all along, and the audience that nobody had told finally found it. On Billboard's children's video chart, the film that died in cinemas went to number 1. Then, the most famous critics on American television caught up. When the next Batman film hit cinemas, Siskel and Ebert reviewed it instead, and opened with an apology. "We made a big mistake," Siskel said, "because it's terrific." He ranked it above every live-action Batman except Tim Burton's original. The vindication had started. It would just take a generation to finish. A generation later, Warner Bros. Announced a restoration scanned from the original negative, and its press release calls this film, quote, "the most universally acclaimed film in the Dark Knight's legendary cinematic history." That is the same studio, selling the same film, the one it once released into an empty room. "Bruce Timm still can't watch it. When I see it, I just cringe," he told Empire. "It's like 90% there. I just wish I had that last 10%. Shirley Walker never lived to see the restoration. Neither did Martin Pascoe, who wrote the graveyard scene, and Kevin Conroy. In the last year of his life, Conroy finally wrote about the role, a short autobiographical comic called Finding Batman, about growing up gay, about a life spent keeping a public self and a private one, and about how the distance between them was the thing he had been handing to Bruce Wayne all along. He died that November. About a dozen people saw this film on Christmas night in a theater Mark Hamill remembers as cavernous. No press release had told them anything. They had already bought the ticket. An empty room is not a verdict. Sometimes it is just the world running late.